It's September 18th, 1944. Today, we are to be registered. We stand on the grounds of the US tent camp and have the opportunity to marvel at the well-functioning organization of the Americans, which equals anything in the German army. When I report my birth date, the American clerk, who had been deeply engrossed in his work, suddenly looks up at me with interested eyes and says, "Your birthday is today." Then he continues to pound away at the keys of his typewriter. "Okay, take it easy." He dismisses me with a snap of his fingers and hands me my prisoner of war number, under which I will be registered with the Americans from now on throughout all eternity. "Today is your birthday, Helmut?" My companions congratulate me once we return to the grounds. "Why did you keep it a secret?" "Unfortunately, I did not know for sure that today is the 18th. 4 soldiers from a work detail, accompanied by an American, enter our compound. Equipped with shovels and picks, they pass by me quickly and follow the path to the latrine. One of them has a roll of copper tubing hanging on his shoulder. Curiously, I follow them and observe from a respectable distance as they stop at the latrine, lay down their tools and take off their shirts. However, it is not their work as such that interests me, since it is immediately clear to me that they are going to dig a new hole. But the copper tubing has intrigued me and given me a fantastic idea. I approach the group as they begin to work. "Do you want to help us?" the guard asks in a sarcastic voice when he becomes aware of my presence, but I act dumb and laughingly shrug my shoulders. "Do you want to help us?" A chubby-faced soldier translates the American's well-understood question. "I have become too weak for such things," I wave tiredly at him. "Sergeants can only show off," a lance corporal bawls, his 7 years of service distinguishable from a distance. "Keep your mouth shut. You are just jealous because you have not amounted to anything." Another spares me an answer. "Go ahead," the American fortunately interrupts the unpleasant conversation. "Lick my ass," the lance corporal spouts at the guard, and angrily swings his pick into the earth, beginning to work like a wild man. "Do you have a toilet, or do you also shit on your billy club?" the red-cheeked prisoner jokingly asks the American after a long pause. "Yes," the guard says unknowingly, to which they all break out in frantic laughter, and the Yankee irritably chews his gum. "Hey, what are you going to do with the copper tubing?" I decide that the time has come and throw out the question that has been burning on my tongue. "So that the latrines can be fenced in and the side toward the outside of the camp covered with a tent canvas, in order to foil the desire of the French to look at the asses of German boys." The staff sergeant, who was so spiteful before, volunteers freely. "That is exactly right." Another confirms his words as I furrow my brow in doubt. "Tell me, do you think you could pass me a piece of the wire without the guard seeing it?" I finally lay my wish on the line. "Of course we can. It just depends on what you are going to lay next to it, my dear fellow. If necessary, I will take the American's gum out of his mouth and let him continue to chew on a condom without arousing his attention," the big-mouthed lance corporal answers. "Lay something down." I respond, "Can you reach into the pants pockets of a naked man?" "Oh, well, you do have something." He remains hard-headed. "How about 3 razor blades?" I ask jokingly. "All right, but they must be as new as the wire." He agrees to the offer. "You will be through in an hour. Before then, I will be back with the razor blades." I turn toward my tent. "Your tubing is even with the earth under the pile of dirt," the old fellow whispers to me as I shake his hand and pass him the razor blades. "It's in order. Greet the homeland for me." I continue loudly and return happily to the tent, where I persuade my 3 companions to make a round of the compound with me. Finally, to ourselves, I reveal my plan to them. The Americans have created an especially lucky coincidence for us with their plan to enclose the new latrine with copper wire. I am planning to exchange the copper as gold with the guards along the fence for food items. Do you really think that the Americans are that dumb that they will take a piece of copper tube for gold? Schultz interrupts me immediately. "Of course not. Open your ears and close your mouths so that I can explain everything to you in peace. Afterward, you can talk as much as you want. You know how interested the Americans are in watches and rings. They buy wedding rings without seeing them and without being able to recognize if they are genuine. That is the point upon which my plan rests. Nothing is easier for me than to make a wedding ring out of a half-circle of tubing. Unfortunately, I do not have the necessary tools, but now we have the necessary material. Underneath the dirt that has been dug out for the latrine, there is a piece of copper tubing which I exchanged for razor blades with prisoners from a work detail. This piece of tubing, whose length I am not sure of myself, can be divided into pieces about 6 inches in length. It is work that any fool can do with a pair of pliers. It is possible to break the tubing by bending it back and forth, but then the ends must be cut straight. Later, they can be fused together so that the swindle will not be immediately obvious. It is clear that the whole operation can only be carried out once since, right afterward, when the happy guards examine their purchased jewellery in good light, it will be obvious to even the dumbest hick that he has been duped. That means we must work hard to produce as many rings as we have material for, and then, on one evening, carry out the big coup. Now, I want to hear your opinion. I end my explanation. You have really hatched something, but I like it much better than your previous doubtful escape plan. Brilla opens the discussion. The whole thing might work if you have enough skill with your fingers to manufacture rings with rocks. But you must consider that there will be ridges and bumps on the rings which will raise suspicions immediately, Schultz objects. Let me worry about that. The deep ridges, which you are right about, Schultz, must be rubbed down with a flat stone. The smaller ridges can be eliminated, and the rings made shiny by rubbing them with sand and on our leather pants. I sidetrack Schultz's objection. Your idea is the best and the last possibility to get something more to eat, Helmut. Hocker finally agrees without any conditions. Just one more question for you. Are we going to do it alone or involve everyone in our tent community? I bring up the basic problem among prisoners who want to carry out such a project. Let's try it alone first, Brilla indicates, becoming serious. It will be hard to keep such work secret. The whole tent will surely become suspicious when we crawl into a corner and hide ourselves to work on the tubing. I am in favour of involving the other comrades, is Schultz's opinion. It would be better to try it alone first. Then there are not that many guards if 24 men are producing rings for them, Hocker suggests thoughtfully. It is also my opinion that it would be better to keep the matter among the 4 of us, Schultz. Then, as good as your intentions are toward the other comrades, there is certainly a man among the 24 who won't stay with us. The tubing at the latrine would be stolen in a few hours, and then the entire coup would be botched. Besides, no one will have anything when the available material is divided into 24 parts. I register my thoughts against Schultz's good intentions. I agree, you are right, but let me stay out of this game. To tell the truth, I don't think I would be very good at this work, and with my views, I would just be in your way. Schultz freely expresses himself. Naturally, that is out of the question, Schultz. As much as I appreciate your points, they are not correct this time. Then I don't see it as a deception against our comrades or against the Americans. It will not hurt anyone, since the Americans will just steal the provisions that they will exchange for the rings, or else they have extra food because they do not distribute it to us. Then it is just when we exact a little well-deserved revenge. So, Schultz, you are a part of the party, and you do not have to do anything more than to cut the wire into pieces, which is just a matter of patience. You don't seriously believe that when we get our bellies full through our work, we will let you wither away in your vanity. Besides, we need you in order to reach our goal quickly. Then it would really be a wonder if no one else came up with the idea but me. Agreed? I ask in closing. Yes, he sighs as roll call is sounded. After roll call, and after we receive our 60 grams of corned beef and 4 biscuits, I stay in the vicinity of the latrine, where I keep my eye on the 3 ends of the wire. Should something change during the course of the night, then speed is all important in order to beat the competition in doing business with the Americans. While I keep an anxious eye on the latrine, Hocker and Brilla saunter around the compound collecting stones that we can use. Because the earth has been dug up around the tent, the necessary tools of the Stone Age can be found, which otherwise would be scarce on a meadow such as the one where we are located. In addition, I need one of the finger-thick round iron bars on which the lower strands of barbed wire are fastened. That is Hocker's assignment. Everything is prepared. We must only wait for night, since I do not dare pull the tubing from under the hill with so many prisoners watching. Finally, the moment arrives. Darkness has silently crept over the land. Only small groups of men stand chatting in front of their tents. The time for exchanging items with the guards has not yet arrived, as the guards are not inclined to barter during daylight, and it is impossible to carry larger exchange items without their superiors noticing. After the first guard change at night, life begins along the fence. But that will slow down, since hardly anyone in the camp still has anything to exchange. Indifferently, I step toward the hill of earth. My boot tips scratch at the spongy earth until I feel an elastic resistance that sounds like metal. Thank God the man did not deceive me. Buried deep inside me, the ugly doubt gnawed at me, but I did not want to admit it. Yes, one must believe in something if he is to succeed. The good lance corporal. As I pull the wire out with my hands, I think, perhaps someday I can repay your good deed better than with the 3 razor blades. Holding the wire tightly like a sword, I saunter toward the tent while part of the wire sticks above my head like an antenna. Unobserved, I slip into the tent and lay the wire on the ground. Everything is in order, I whisper to my friends and fall asleep happily. September 19th, 1944. Before the first grey is visible in the eastern sky, Hocker and I stand at the latrine and inspect the fence. Relieved, I tell Hocker that nothing has changed, but there are more latrines with copper wire in this large camp. There is no shortage of men with understanding and good ideas. Restlessly, the fear of competition drives me around the compound, until finally the sun overcomes endless Russia and lights the western half of Europe. Without delay, we begin our work. The 6-foot-long tubing is cut into 2 equal parts in a few minutes. With a sharp-edged stone squeezed between our knees, each of us begins rasping away the ridges on the tubing. With strength and endurance that none of us would have expected anymore, we continue to work the material over the sharp stone under strong pressure. Before the first one heads to the latrine, I hold 2 6-inch-long pieces of tubing in my hand. Now we must separate ourselves, Willie. No one can notice the context of our work. Under no circumstances can anyone get the picture that we are working on rings. In case of an emergency, you can explain to the all-too-curious that the wire was forgotten by the work detail, and you are going to make a hook for your cans. I will sit at my usual writing place behind the tent where no one is inclined to disturb me, since I have already driven the gapers from that place. I will bend the rings. No one can surprise me, because I only keep one tool in my hand and all the others in my pocket, something that I advise to all of you. I make my way to my usual writing place behind the tent where Hocker has placed the iron bar and a red sandstone, which is very good for my work. Industriously, but without haste, I begin to grind the surface of a piece of copper to give it the necessary half-round form. I only interrupt the work on one if it gets too hot because of rubbing too fast, and then continue with the second one. After considerable time, the first success is apparent. The pieces have been shaped into their half-round form. Nearly crazy with joy, I rub the deepest scratches out with moist sand until they sparkle before me from the first rays of sunshine. Bathed in sweat, I suddenly become dizzy and nearly black out as I begin to smooth and polish the ends. My tired hands no longer obey my will. Exhausted, I drop the tubing to the ground. I feel like I am going to faint. Before my closed eyes dance thick slices of corned beef and a heaping box of biscuits. "Water," I stammer from my dried mouth, before I completely pass out. But it could only have been a few seconds that I was unconscious. Then I see the same picture of sun and wind as I open my eyes again. Only a glaring weakness makes me aware of my true physical condition. It is high time that we take our fate into our own hands, and an outflow of hate against the rich Americans who trample around this island of misery like fat pigs, withholding the most necessary provisions from us, drives me to continue to work, filled with sheer rage and the satanic anticipation that in a short time I will stick it to them with their own copper tubing, I bend the first ring around the iron bar and hammer the end tightly together with a round stone. Becoming ice-cold inside, I peel the nearly finished ring from the iron bar with considerable effort and contemplate my work with satisfaction. With ill-concealed wrath, I proceed with the finishing work. All the dents and scratches are eliminated by careful rubbing with sand and stone, which is not any rougher than a middle-range grinding stone that you'd find in any workshop. The final work involves the use of sand and wet dirt. I watch to see that the ring does not open and that it retains its brightness, brought out by polishing it on the buckskin seat of my pants. So I have earned the first meal in captivity. Now I will test it. Quickly I swap my authentic ring with the false one and go to my friends, whom I find are not working diligently. "Man, this is a shitty job," Brilla receives me. "Really shitty work, Helmut," Hocker joins in, and I feel like boxing their ears. "How far did you get?" I ask in a harmless tone. "Each one has cut through one, but we wasted a lot of time trying to find a better method," Hocker answers me shamelessly. "You fools!" I jump on them. "Don't you believe that I didn't do it before you? There is no other possibility here. I hope that you didn't tramp around the compound with the wire and ask for a saw or pliers." "Not that, but we wanted to ask a soldier from the provisions tent for some pincers. Unfortunately, there has been a guard on the main road since this morning, where they are just finishing a guardhouse." Brilla confesses in the most harmless manner, this attempt of unbelievably stupid proportions. "Just continue to work so that your brain can finally get some nourishment, since it has suffered great need in the last while, as I can tell by the way you have gone about this." I satisfy them and me. "Look here." I hold the finished ring on my hand under their noses. "They must look like this one if we want to succeed." "Have you polished your own ring so that you know how the others must look?" Brilla asks sarcastically, looking at the fake ring without any perception. "That is exactly what I wanted to know from you, you fool. Don't you see that it is made of copper?" I take the ring from my finger and hand it to the two of them. Boy, oh boy, that is quite the thing. They become enthused about the project and stare at the ring from all sides. Man, the most the American will think is that he has received a broken ring. In any case, days will pass before they realize that this time they have lost at the party. Hocker happily revels. "Then let's get to work, men." I leave them reassured that things will now move forward. While several changes have occurred in the camp in the past 7 days, my friends and I carry on with countless hours of work on the plan we developed on my birthday. We tell no one of our work, as though under a spell we rasp, hammer, bend and polish wedding rings for the Americans, which they can put in their noses on their wedding days, as a reminder of the German prisoners of war in Camp Alençon, who, driven by starvation, were forced to such desperate measures. It is nearly 10 o'clock. In a few minutes the guards will appear, and we will approach them with our export items. 15 pieces of jewellery, created from desperation with the most primitive tools, wait in our pockets for their future owners. Everything has been reconnoitred and discussed. Nothing can go wrong. No competition can spoil the business. The price has been set with some flexibility. Only Schultz must be separated because of his striking, stately appearance as a salesman. And now, at 10:10 p.m., we step toward the compound exit to smuggle ourselves into other compounds. The fox does not steal where he himself lives. Like this sly animal, I prowl, protected by the night, along the camp road to Compound 15 and enter. In the meantime, Hocker and Brilla have reached Compounds 2 and 31, which adjoin each other. Unhindered, I mix among the few men who stand at their latrine, watching the individual Germans at the fence doing business with the Americans. The last hesitations have been fought back. Determined to get the highest price possible for my idea and work, I step up to the fence and point with my left index finger to the ring on my right hand. An American quickly turns on his lamp and looks at the false piece of jewellery for a second. "How many cigarettes?" the first interested American asks. "No cigarettes, food," I demand coldly. "Okay, this tin." He reaches to hand me a 2-pound can out of a clothes bag sitting on the ground. "What's in it?" I feign fastidiousness. "Pork," he answers importantly. Pork? What is pork? I break my head trying to remember. It is very good. He tries to encourage me to take it as I resist. It is very fat pork sausage, my neighbour explains and licks his lips. Okay, I say, as though disappointed, as I take the ring from my finger. The American shoves 2 roof rafters between the barbed wire to establish contact, while the other guards keep their weapons pointed at me. Contemptuously, I frown and lay the ring on the board. Carefully, the Yankee sets the can on the second board. Drawn by our hands, the objects of exchange pass one another and change owners. With shaking hands, I hold the cold, heavy can in my hands. Caressingly cool, the breeze strokes my hot cheeks as I slip out of the compound. It went all right, I think, and breathe easily once I feel the camp road under my boot soles. Number 19 stands in faded paint on the small wooden board at the entrance to my second field of activity. The strange latrine lies lonesome and, lighted by the moon, ghostly, like an open grave before me. There is no guard visible along the corridor. The entire compound appears to have died. Becoming discouraged, I am about to sit down on one of the crossbeams of the latrine when I hear a metal clank on the barbed wire. It can only be the weapon of a guard that has struck the wire, I think, happily excited, and look in the direction from which the noise has come. Finally, a huge shadow comes closer. Barely perceptible in the milky moonlight are the shiny coat buttons of the American. "Why don't you sleep?" the unexpected soldier asks. "I am hungry," I answer honestly. "Are you a Nazi?" he asks with surprising sharpness. "Since I am here, maybe," I respond without thinking. A rush of curse words streams through the barbed wire at me, but I cannot understand a word. Suddenly he jerks his left hand out of his coat pocket and throws something, which I presume to be a hand grenade, over the 6-foot-high fence, then continues on his way. Pressed flat on the mound of earth by the latrine, I hear the dull thump of the metal object as it lands just a few steps away. My mind registers that it is a dud after a few seconds pass, and the expected detonation does not follow. "Bad luck, you scoundrel," I mumble to myself, and search the trampled grass for the projectile. Deeply ashamed, I stare at a small can on the bare ground. But still responding to experience, I resist touching the thing, but instead kneel down and take a close look. "Milk," I am able to make out as I strain my eyes. I have to force myself not to laugh. "The devil can try to make sense of these damned Americans," shoots through my mind as I shove the can into my pocket and leave the compound. I cross the camp road and enter compound 21. "Is anyone there who has a watch to barter?" The exchange minister of this compound calls in ordinary black market jargon as I step among the group of prisoners assembled around the latrine. No one responds. With the upper parts of their bodies bent forward, their hands buried deeply in their pockets, bearded and ragged, stand the brave sons of Germany, shaken in despair behind American barbed wire, waiting for a crust of bread that may fall out of the pockets of the well-nourished guards. Filled with rage, I push my way to the fence. Once again, I raise my right hand and point with the left one to the ring on my finger. "2 breads?" I entice the 2 Americans standing between the walls of wire. "No bread, only pork." The thick-necked guard, resembling a garden dwarf, crows to me from under his steel helmet. "Okay, 2 cans, I demand boldly, taking the ring from my finger and holding it in my open hand as they shine their light upon it. "Okay, catch it," cracks the voice of the smaller one, and a can flies over the fence into my outstretched hands. Once again, a board slides through the fence. With a light heart, I lay my ring on the altar of our guards. "It is broken," both of them cuss at the same time once their light rests again on the piece of jewellery. But their next words are lost on the wind. The person to whom they were directed has already fled to compound 24 for rest and recovery. Schultz's coat lies heavily on my shoulders as the heavy cans in the pockets await our destruction. A still heavier burden is the doubt weighing on my mind about carrying out the rest of my plan. There was nearly a problem, and I would have left empty-handed. We still have 3 rings to exchange for food. 2 cans of pork and 1 can of milk are now in my possession. Let's go. I drive myself and stride through the compound. No food, only cigarettes, is the laconic answer from my new bartering partner in response to my approach. Silently, I take the package of cigarettes bound with an elastic band from the rifle barrel and hang a ring on the edge of the barrel. The cold eyes of the American, with his finger on the trigger, rest determinedly on my hands and observe sharply their actions. But his concerns are unfounded. I do not intend to withhold my masterpiece from him. Lazily, I lift my hand in farewell and disappear into the darkness. You will also think of me, I rejoice inwardly. Leisurely, I wander out of the enclosure and turn again toward Compound 19. The guards must have been changed in the meantime. I stand at the entrance, listening and looking up to the few stars. Dead silence lies over the camp. The shadows of the row of tents stand gloomily, their points raised like an index finger in the pale moonlight. There is no inner warning. Therefore, off to the enemy, I jerk myself up and shove off from the post on which I am resting. From far away, I discover the guard by the glow of his cigarette. Not entirely sure that the change of guards has taken place, I sit on the latrine crossbeam like an ordinary user and turn my neck to make out the figure of the guard. Under no circumstances do I want to come into view of the unusual milk giver. Yes, the man along the corridor is smaller than the can thrower. Still, I am reluctant to approach him. In order to draw his attention toward me, I step away from the latrine and in front of the guard, stuffing my shirt into my pants. Schultz's coat lies thrown carelessly over the parallel beam on which the crossbeam rests. Just then, the American flips his cigarette butt in a high arc over the fence near my feet. "Don't you smoke?" he asks in amazement when I do not jump upon the butt. "I am hungry," I repeat my line. "Do you have a watch?" is the prompt response from the soul of a businessman. "Only this ring?" I point to my right hand. "How much?" he asks, slightly interested. "2 breads," I respond, and reach for Schultz's coat. "You get this can." He pulls out one of the familiar cans of pork. "Damn it all," I mutter angrily. "Just sausage." "What?" the Yankee asks, since he did not understand. "Bread," I repeat my demand. "No bread." The man slowly becomes sour. "It is good," I explain. I am in agreement, and for the 4th time this evening pull a ring from my finger. The can rolls behind me while the guard sticks his weapon through the barbed wire. Unconcerned, the American draws the ring-decorated barrel back again. Quickly, I turn away and pick up the can. Ashamed, the crescent moon hides behind the shreds of cloud after the fraud is finished, and I slip out of the compound. Compound 15 silently admits me. The last ring sits loosely on my finger. Wouldn't it be better to deliver the goods I have acquired to Schultz, instead of chancing the last attempt so heavily loaded? So I order myself and creep like an overcooked profiteer along the fence. A civilian, whose story is known throughout the entire camp, stands at the concertina wire and speaks every evening, like a wandering preacher, to the guards in perfect English. There is hardly an occupant of a tent in Alençon, be he German or American, who is not acquainted with his fate. But he takes himself much too importantly, and considers his situation very unusual, even though he notices the mild laughter with which many hear his account for the 2nd or 3rd time. When war broke out with France in 1939, he was living as a rich German tradesman in Paris. At that time, the French naturally put him on ice immediately, and he was set free by our troops in July 1940. He returned to his comfortable dwelling in Paris and continued his business activities. After August 1944, when the Americans turned Paris over to de Gaulle's troops, he was once again in the hands of the French and landed safely in Alençon. Naturally, he was a civilian and should not have been brought to a prisoner of war camp, but it is a big joke that he continually identifies himself as the most innocent sacrifice of the war among 15,000 of his fellow countrymen. No one is bothered by his daily lamentations, and so he continues to speak on and on. It is only that at the moment he irks me with all the babble out of his gold-filled mouth, and I am afraid he will keep the guard's attention until he is relieved. "Do you have anything to exchange?" he finally interrupts after I call attention to myself with a cough. "I only have my wedding ring, but I will trade it for some provisions," I answer him despondently. Apparently trying to get rid of me so that he can continue to speak, the German acts immediately as an intermediary. The transaction occurs unexpectedly quickly for me. Certainly he has talked the American's ear off. Then, without looking, he shoves the ring into his coat pocket, while I shove another can of pork into my pocket, bid them goodbye, and leave the deceived American to his long-winded visitor. My work is over. Heavily loaded, I shuffle along the camp road toward the tent that has become my home. The seducer rages in my breast and demands that I open the can of milk I received as a gift. I deserve it since I have carried out my assignment to the full satisfaction of my friends. But you are a fool and still believe in the honesty of your world. God be thanked that you are here, Helmut. Schultz greets me at the entrance to the compound. What is it, my boy, that you look at me so disturbed? He asks, concerned, and attempts to read an answer in my face. Nothing, Schultz. I am only happy, finally happy, that you are here and that you waited for me. I answer the good man, and feel a relief as the devil in my breast disappears. Hocker and Briller have been back for nearly an hour. Where have you kept yourself so long? I can tell you, the work paid off, even if you did not get anything. But come, let's go to the other two. They have been sitting for a long time in front of the opened cans, waiting for you. He whispers hastily, and takes me behind our tent to my writing place, where Hocker and Briller greet me with a laugh. Without losing many words, Hocker presents an opened can of pork that he holds between his feet. Without a sound, Briller tears 2 loaves of bread apart and holds the not quite equal parts out to us with closed eyes. Schultz's silver spoon makes the rounds as each one of us shovels a mouthful and then passes it on to the next. Like animals, we gorge ourselves on the slippery sausage and cram the bread in afterward. After a while, the thought enters my mind that later on I will only buy this kind of sausage. Full? Hocker asks, looking around the group, answering himself as the empty can slips out of his hand. Full? We wonder about Hocker's question and shake our heads no. Open another can, Willie, Briller hisses greedily. That's enough, Schultz counsels against it. We are going to ruin our stomachs. Open it! I shove Schultz's warning aside because of the insane urge raging in my intestines. Hocker runs the can opener around the lid and smears each portion into our hands. Just like monkeys, we eat the sausage with dirty fingers. We have sunk much lower than the pigs, Schultz mumbles, ashamed, folding his fat hands over his knees. In contemplation, we stare at the 5 empty cans. The rest, gentlemen. I turn our attention from the gluttony and pull my 4 cans of pork, the pack of cigarettes, and the can of milk from Schultz's coat pockets. What took you so long? Hocker asks with a concerned voice as my eyes rest on the can of milk. Everything went all right. Just once I had to make a quick exit when the boss discovered the crack in the ring. One of them gave me the can of condensed milk. I just needed more time than we had planned to get around to all of the compounds. I give the truthful answer. But how is it that you returned so quickly? I ask, surprised, looking at the booty they bring out from the hiding place, which far exceeds mine. You fine dandies. I cannot restrain myself as my hands joyfully burrow into the box. In total, the two have acquired 11 cans of pork, 2 loaves of bread, and a box of biscuits. All of this from only 3 guards, Briller triumphs with a shameless grin on his face. It was the easiest thing in the world, Hocker smirks proudly. Against your suggestion, we stayed together, and in 3/4 of an hour we sold all 10 rings in Compound 2 without any incident. None of the boys noticed the swindle. The cans came like hail over the fence after we showed them the rings. We only had to endure a little anxiety. Briller sums up the experience in military shortness. Then our trick was a success, and our work richly rewarded. Now, friends, we just have to secure our success. I end the conversation and get up. Together, Hocker and I place the entire booty, except for the cigarettes and the small can of milk, in the box, which we then bury in the hole that we had prepared. A stone covers our food cellar from the view of the uninitiated. After the work is finished, we rejoin Schultz and Briller, who were positioned as guards to divert others from our secret work. Restless from the entire event and satisfied that my plan has been carried out, we slip into the tent and lie down on the hard earth for a well-earned sleep, with our stomachs somewhat satisfied.